Good morning, everyone. I'm Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party and the Megyn Kelly Wrap-Up Show on SiriusXM Channel 111. It's Thursday, January 22nd, 2026, and this is your AM update.
No one is above the law in this state or in this country.
Several top-ranking Minnesota Democrats receiving subpoenas tied to their alleged roles in obstructing federal immigration efforts.
I mean, it's so obvious, and that's what we saw in Minnesota, is how complicit the government has been in enabling this fraud to happen.
Conservative influencer Nick Shirley testifies on the Hill about his independent investigation into Minnesota fraud. President Trump announces a framework deal with NATO on Greenland. And the House Oversight Committee votes to hold Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update.
If you are looking to make smarter choices for your health this year, consider Riverben Ranch. Their steaks are not only delicious, they also contain real high-quality protein that helps fuel your body. Beef is a complete protein and contains all 9 essential amino acids your body needs to function. It also keeps you fuller for longer, reducing cravings and snacking. That's all good stuff. But here is the key. Not all beef is created equal. The quality of the beef depends entirely on how it's raised and where it comes from. That's where Riverben Ranch stands apart. For more than 35 years, Riverben Ranch has been building an elite Black Angus herd, carefully selecting cattle for exceptional flavor and tenderness. All Riverben Ranch cattle are born and raised right here in the USA. They never use growth hormones or antibiotics, and the beef is processed at the ranch in their award-winning USDA-inspected facility. No shortcuts, no middlemen, just incredible, healthy, and flavorful beef shipped directly to your home. Order today at riverbenranch.com and use the promo code Megyn for $20 off your first order.
At least 5 Democrat officials in Minnesota served with subpoenas on Tuesday in connection with the DOJ's investigation into whether state and local leaders obstructed federal immigration efforts. Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, St. Paul Mayor Colley, State Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, all reportedly receiving document requests at their offices from the DOJ. The subpoenas do not indicate a specific statute, however, CBS News reporting, quote, the primary statute being used as the basis for the probe is 18 U.S.C. 372, or conspiracy to impede or injure an officer, the same one that was used against some of the rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, including members of the far-right Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey reportedly making harsh, inflammatory public comments against the feds, encouraging residents to take to the streets and protest the thousands of agents that surged into the sanctuary region amid widespread accusations of fraud. Tensions erupting further following the fatal shooting of trained agitator Renee Good by an ICE agent after she drove her car toward him. CBS News reporting the subpoena requests 8 categories of documents, including those related to federal immigration enforcement in Minnesota and any communications concerning the lack of cooperation with the feds. Attorney General Pam Bondi speaking to Fox Tuesday night from Minnesota.
Whether it's a public official, whether it's a law enforcement officer, no one is above the law in this state or in this country. And people will be held accountable. This state is a mess right now. We've seen the chaos, and it's constant. And our men and women in law enforcement deserve to be safe. And that's what we're going to do in Minnesota.
Governor Walz responding on social media, quote, the state of Minnesota will not be drawn into political theater. This Justice Department investigation, sparked by calls for accountability in the face of violence, chaos, and the killing of Renee Good, does not seek justice. Mayor Frey responding in a social media statement, quote, when the federal government weaponizes its power to intimidate local leaders for doing their jobs, every American should be concerned. U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commander Greg Bovino at a Tuesday briefing responding to claims that the surge is political in nature.
Leaders like Tim Walz or Mayor Frey have relied on heated rhetoric and accusations that distract from the facts. The facts are that federal agents are arresting murderers, rapists, child predators, cartel-connected criminals, and other individuals who pose a real danger to the people of Minneapolis. What we do is legal, ethical, and moral. Everything we do every day is legal, ethical, moral, well-grounded in law. We will continue enforcing the law. We will continue making arrests, and we will continue working to keep Minneapolis safe.
Mayor Frye's subpoena requesting him to appear before a grand jury on February 3rd. It is unclear if the other subpoenas have similar requests. Meanwhile, the DOJ is sending more prosecutors to Minnesota, following a wave of recent departures that have strained federal case capacity, reports the Washington Post. One of the investigations now drawing scrutiny reportedly centering on the anti-ICE agitators who deliberately disrupted a Sunday church service at City's Church in St. Paul, confronting a preacher mid-worship. Here's a moment of the disruption as captured by formerly semi-famous TV host Don Lemon, who accompanied the rioters.
I'm not part of the group. I'm just here photographing. I'm a journalist.
Same thing.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem promising arrests are coming Tuesday on Newsmax.
That pastor really did a remarkable thing there, trying to protect his parishioners.
And even the parishioners, I imagine, have felt and feel intimidated. And
they did, and there's going to be arrests in the next several hours, Greta. There will be arrests tied to that, and people will be brought to justice for how they violated the law in that situation.
As of this moment, no arrests have been made, but AM Update and the Megyn Kelly Show will stay on the story. The House Judiciary Committee holding a hearing yesterday on fraud and theft of taxpayer dollars. Among the witnesses, conservative influencer Nick Shirley, whose reporting on Somali-run, taxpayer-funded businesses in Minnesota has drawn national attention, racking up more than 140 million views on X alone. Shirley in December publishing a 42-minute video showing visits to Somali-run daycares and healthcare companies he alleges are collecting millions in public funds each year without providing legitimate services. Shirley discovering up to $110 million in potential fraud in a single day, including at this daycare facility.
So this is Quality Learning Center. I meant to say Quality Learning Center. They spelt learning wrong.
That reporting triggering a multi-agency federal response, including a freeze by HHS on child care payments in Minnesota, along with additional freezes from other agencies pending audits. That scrutiny taking center stage at yesterday's hearing. Here, part of Shirley's opening statement.
We the people have had enough of our hard-earned money going towards fraudsters as if it's no big deal. Governor Walz has said he's been fighting fraud in Minnesota since 2019 and said the buck stops with him. However, how long would it take for you to notice $1 million leaving your bank account and not knowing where it's going? That's essentially what had been happening in Minnesota for years as billions of dollars has been misplaced. And meanwhile, while people like Governor Tim Walz call people like me a white supremacist, delusional conspiracy theorist, he actually decided to drop out of re-election because I believe of how deep and extensive this fraud is.
One witness, Scott Dexter, a former police officer and fraud investigator, testifying just how blatant the alleged fraud appeared on the ground.
In your investigation, sir, was the fraud as obvious as it seems to me that it appeared in the videos and the other evidence that I've reviewed?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when we would go out to do our investigations, one of the things that we would have to do, or I would have to do, is we would scout out a location for our surveillance cameras that allowed us direct line of sight to the centers, all their accesses. A lot of that, because of the location where we were in these industrial, commercial areas, meant we had to go to businesses and ask them permission. And the number one comment they made was, oh, you mean that daycare center over there where there's no children? So everyone else around it saw it.
Democrats repeatedly shifting focus away from Minnesota, arguing fraud happens everywhere rather than engaging directly with the specific failures exposed in Minnesota.
Fraud is endemic in government all over the world. Even our president has been convicted of 34 counts of criminal fraud.
Just last week, Trump added a quite a few fraudsters to his growing list of people that he has pardoned, not because they are deserving a second chance, but because they hired his friends.
Congressman Kevin Kiley of California, a Republican, agreeing that fraud in other states is worth investigating.
I have a particular interest in California, being from that state, and we know that there's been a lot of fraud.
Yeah, and fraud in California might be worse than the fraud in Minnesota.
What makes you say that?
Well, $24 billion went missing for homelessness.
So $24 billion in homelessness, and yet the homeless population went up, and a state audit found that they couldn't even figure out where the money went or what the outcomes linked to that spending were. Is that something that is kind of a red flag for you?
Yeah, it's a major red flag.
Well, unfortunately, our state legislators haven't managed to figure that out, or at least the governor hasn't. So what are you saying about him?
They're not smart. No, but yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, and that's what we saw in Minnesota, is how complicit the government has been in enabling this fraud to happen.
A former prosecutor in Minnesota saying the fraud could amount to as much as $9 billion. Coming up, President Trump announces a deal between the U.S. and NATO on Greenland, and the House Oversight Committee votes to hold Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress.
Our sponsor, the Electronic Payments Coalition, says Washington politicians are always getting in your wallet, and that now they're messing with your credit card. They say your credit card and the security it offers are under attack, and that Senators Dick Durbin and Roger Marshall want to change the nation's payment system in a way that would benefit corporate megastores like Walmart and Target at the expense of everyday Americans. Credit cards can keep your payments secure, and they can provide rewards that families use to help make everyday purchases more affordable. The Electronic Payments Coalition says the Durbin-Marshall mandates would let corporate megastores cut corners on credit card processing, routing transactions over cheaper, untested networks with weaker security and fewer protections. Find out more at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card.
Hours after a highly anticipated speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, President Trump announcing that the U.S. and NATO allies have reached a framework for a future agreement on Greenland. The announcement coming after a day of back-to-back meetings between Mr. Trump and other world leaders, as uncertainty over the future of the semi-autonomous territory and the NATO alliance hung in the balance. Earlier in the day, President Trump moving to ease immediate tensions by explicitly ruling out the use of military force to take Greenland from NATO ally Denmark, though the broader campaign remained active with the threat of additional tariffs looming. Mr. Trump meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, a longtime ally who has shown a greater willingness than many European leaders to publicly back the president's hardline negotiating tactics. President Trump addressing reporters shortly after that meeting.
It's a deal that people jumped at. Really fantastic for the USA. Gets everything we wanted, including especially real national security and international security.
How so? Can you give us some details, please?
Well, the deal is going to be put out pretty soon, and we'll see. It's right now a little bit in progress, but pretty far along. It gets us everything we needed to get.
Does it still include the United States having ownership of Greenland like you've said you wanted?
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. And I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and everything else.
How long would the deal be, Mr. President?
Infinite.
According to the New York Times, officials discussing a compromise allowing the U.S. to take limited pockets of sovereignty to build military bases on Greenland. President Trump posting to Truth Social, quote, "Based upon this understanding, I will not be imposing the tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st. Additional discussions are being held concerning the Golden Dome as it pertains to Greenland." The president going on to say Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will lead the negotiations. Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen, reacting on social media, quote, "The day is ending on a better note than it began. We welcome that POTUS has ruled out taking Greenland by force and paused the trade war. Now, let's sit down and find out how we can address the American security concerns in the Arctic while respecting the red lines of the Kingdom of Denmark." The stock market, nervous about the threat of additional tariffs, rallying on the news. It's unclear when the full details of the framework will be made available. The House Oversight Committee yesterday voting to hold former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress for defying subpoenas related to its probe into the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. The vote to hold Mr. Clinton in contempt passing 34-8, with 2 members voting present. The vote on Mrs. Clinton passing 28-15, with 1 voting present. Both measures passing with some bipartisan support. The Clintons declining to appear for depositions last week following months of negotiations over the terms of their testimony. Last week, the Clintons releasing a letter sent to the committee outlining their push to avoid testimony by submitting a sworn statement attesting that they do not have relevant knowledge to the investigation. Here's Committee Chairman James Comer ahead of yesterday's vote.
Subpoenas are not mere suggestions. They carry the force of law and require compliance. We've offered flexibility on scheduling. The response we received was not cooperation, but defiance, marked by repeated delays, excuses, and obstruction. The Clintons claim they have been treated unfairly because this committee accepted written statements under penalty of perjury from former U.S. Attorneys General Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as former FBI Director Comey. Those written statements were accepted because none of those officials recalled information relevant to the Epstein investigation, nor did they have personal relationships with Epstein. By contrast, the committee required in-person testimony from former U.S. Attorney General Barr and former U.S. Secretary of Labor and U.S. Attorney Acosta, both Republicans, because they possessed information directly relevant to the investigation.
Last Friday, Team Clinton making a final bid to the committee, offering to meet in New York with the chairman and ranking member for an interview, each accompanied by staff members allowed to take notes, which the committee rejected. Under the law, contempt of Congress carries a maximum penalty of up to 1 year in prison and a fine of up to $100,000. The contempt citations now move to the House for a full vote before they can be referred to the DOJ for possible prosecution. It is not clear when the full vote will be held. That'll do it for your AM update. I'm Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party. Catch The Megyn Kelly Show live on SiriusXM's The Megyn Kelly Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms.